Well, hey, I'm working on my KLX300R today. It's a 2007 model. It's March 21st here, 2020. Trying to get ready for spring riding and a better summer on this KLX. It's had a dead spot in the carburetor right as you twist the throttle. They say that's symptomatic of the factory carb of the, they call those CV carbs. And trying to eliminate that fact. We ride in some sand from occasion and up hills and especially in the sand, it's really noticeable when you romp on the throttle and the thing falls on its face, and everybody that was in line with you is in front of you. So anyway, I'm trying to eliminate that problem before this summer's riding starts. And the general idea on how to eliminate that, there's several modifications you can do, airbox mods and things, and but the general consensus is to get rid of the CV carb and use a mikuni. And I have purchased a mikuni and I'm in the process of installing it, but I've run into a few setbacks along the way. It's following the instructions that I found online. See if I can get that in there. Anyway, it's from the KLX Zone from the UK, which is now a defunct website, no longer works. And some guy named Tony Saunders was the one who put these instructions together, and they're actually quite good instructions for the most part. It's just there are a few differences from whenever they put together these instructions and what I have today, especially with my the way the throttle linkage hooks up. So this is the factory carb, the CV carb, and this is the Mikuni Tm33-8012. And you can just tell right off the bat you're going to have a little bit of a difference because just of where the throttle cables are in relation to the throttle cables over here, and the throttle cable holder there, and the throttle cable holder up here. The instructions from KLX Zone talk about using my bike has two cables coming from the throttle, and it talks about just hooking up one of them, which I'm totally fine with. However, I'll show you in a little bit when I try to put this back on the bike. This part of the butterfly throttle, that gets in the way of the head, bumps on the cylinder of the motorcycle. Also, this dual clamp for the cables is impossible to hook up the way it is. Little differences between the CV carb and the Mikuni carb. One is got this vacuum slide, and that's where the lag comes from. You twist the throttle, and it has to build enough vacuum to lift that slide. Whereas on the pumper carb, you twist the throttle. See if I can do this. You twist the throttle, and you see the slide is automatic. Plus, it pumps a little. They call it a pumper because as soon as you twist the throttle, it pumps a little fuel right into the stream for instant takeoff. That's the main difference between the two styles. I'll set this one to the side. This one's the Mikuni again. Very nice setup. It's just, it fits the bike almost. There's a few things you have to do to the bike to make it fit. One of the things you have to do get this on the video. Let's see if I can. This little stanchion right here, you'll have to grind some of it off to make the carburetor fit in there. It's set this down in there, you can see. Right there, you can see. I hope that focuses. And then see the one on the other side, and then there's that one. You have to grind out just that much to get it, to get the carburetor to slide in there. I probably took apart a little more than necessary of the bike to do this. Just could not get the carburetor to line up, so I wanted to move the air box back, and it's almost like they build the bike around the air box. Finally figured out how they get that air box into the frame is from the left side. So as you can see, you could probably wiggle that thing on out of there through the left side. I thought it had to come out through the back to get me enough room, but that's not really true. You can kind of twist it out to the left side and get you enough room to line things up. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to put the carburetor in there, and I'll show you some of the alignment issues here in just a second. So one thing you should note, that on the Mikuni carburetor, you will have to have a adapter ring on the cold air side made. The instructions, or the dimensions, are in the instructions from the UK zone, or the KLX zone website. If I can find them in them, I will show them to you. Those are the dimensions in which the ring should be made. I had one made at a local machine shop. Kind of owed me a favor, and they came through and made me one overnight out of aluminum. And then I just tapped it onto the carburetor about that far. I used a little what we call grape jelly sealant. It's a Permatex product. I don't know exactly. I think it's called flange mount. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but I had some, and so I used it. I'll show you another couple of differences. In the instruction book, this is what his Mikuni carburetor looked like, and you notice the difference in the bracket here, and the fact that there's only a half of a butterfly with only the pull side on there. So what I'm contemplating doing on mine, here's mine, is cutting off this side. And his Mikuni's a little different than my Mikuni for some reason. And you see that his bracket and the instructions are quite a bit different from my bracket. A little tip that you'll find is you can take this bracket off of the carburetor when trying to fit it onto the bike, because it just won't go in there without taking this off. See how his picture of his is dramatically different from mine. I did not know that you had to take that off of there until you go to like page 2 over here, and it says you must take this off to make it work. Okay, so now I'm going to try and fit the carburetor on the bike, and I'll show you the fitment issues I'm dealing with. Okay, so here's some of the fitment issues that I'm having. I have the carburetor just loosely in there. You can tell it's not even good into the clamp, and you've got the throttle butterfly. That would be the push side of the cables, is on the head or on the cylinder, and also you can see, get the right camera angle. You can also see in here the pull these cables out of the way. This is the cable brackets, and with the push side on the cable bracket, it's just not gonna fit in. They're not gonna fit in here. So I'm thinking that has to be modified, and I'm thinking that butterfly has to be removed. And I've got some feelers out on the internet, some people who are done this before. Gonna run it by them, and then I'll continue. But for now, I'm gonna put this project on hold until I gather some information. Okay, so I did get some advice via the internet. I was able to locate a man named Bill Blue, who has a shop, a machine shop, I guess, that he's quite familiar with these carburetors and making this conversion. He makes looks like a cylinder kit that you can convert a 250 KLX to a 351 KLX. And so after exchanging a few emails with him and actually speaking with him on the phone, learned a few things from him that I did not know. One being this distance here on the this would be the hot side. This is not long enough on this side, and so it makes your bracket up here in the wrong position whenever this is not seated correctly in the boots on the engine. So what he does, if I understand him right, turns this down, installs an adapter similar to the adapter I put on this side. He turns one down on this side and puts a sleeve on it, which extends it out, which will push this bracket back to the right spot where it lines up well. He says you do not have to cut this side of the butterfly off, although you could if you wanted to. Anyway, he says whenever you put this sleeve on this side, that it pushes the carburetor back farther to the rear of the bike, makes everything line up much better. He also puts a sleeve on this side, and then he turns the bore down on the carburetor. This is a 33 millimeter, and he turns it down to a 34 millimeter like the factory carburetor was. So in a box she goes. I'm going to send her off to Bill's shop. have him install the correct bushing on this side. Don't know what he wants to do about this side. If he wants to pull that off and put his bushing on there, that's fine with me. I think he charges about $100 to do all this. Hey, it's only money. If we wanted a cheap hobby, we'd do something else. So hopefully I'll have that back by next weekend, and I can put this bike back together next weekend. So stay tuned. Okay, so I got my Mikuni back from Bill Blue, Wichita, Kansas. Sent it off because I was having fitment issues on the KLX300, and I spoke to him on the phone before sending it to him, and what Bill does is he adds this sleeve to the carburetor, which creates more distance between the carburetor and the cylinder, so that this fits. You don't have to cut this butterfly off, which I was anticipating doing. And Bill also modified the throttle cable bracket to where it would fit. And whenever you increase this distance here, it makes your throttle cable bracket come out to the right spot. Bill also bores this carburetor back out to a 34 millimeter carburetor. This is a 33 whenever you buy it from the factory. Or from Mikuni, and the carburetor on your KLX300R, the factory one, is a 34 millimeter. Now Bill also puts a sleeve on this side. You can see that helps fitment of the boots. If you don't put that on there and you crank down on your boots, they eventually dry, crack, and then you've got problems. Bill charges right at $100 to do this. There's the sleeve that I had made that I was going to have put on this side, and this is made exactly like the instructions from the KLX online club. What is that? KLX the forum's not even on there anymore, but it's KLX something, but it's a defunct forum anymore. Anyway, there's some instructions floating around out there, and that does is it actually just kind of creates more problems by pushing the carburetor closer to the head or to the cylinder. So about to fit this on the KLX300, and hopefully we'll be firing her up here in a little bit. All right, so I did get the Mikuni in the bike. You can see right away there's better fitment issues there with the throttle cable bracket and the throttle cable anchor, the butterfly. You still had to take the throttle cable bracket off to get the carburetor in there. Took a little bit of a shoehorning to get it in. You can see how it fits into the boot there on the, this would be the right hand side of the bike. And see how I ran the throttle cables. Of course, I'm using the factory setup for now. You don't use this would be the push cable. We don't use that, so I just tied it up off to the side. I hope that's where it ends up whenever I put the tank on, but we'll see. Of course, here's the pull cable. Move around here to the left side of the bike. See the fitment there on the exit of the carburetor, the hot side. And see how I I just cable tied the vent and the drain to the crankcase vent, and comes out back here. Anyway, put the tank on now, see how it goes. Okay, so the extra throttle cable thing did not work out at all where I had it on that previous video, and now I'm going to try and run it down the side of this frame and just zip tie it up right there. Not super excited about this, but I didn't want to turn that in and get it into anything that's moving, so I'll give that a try.
No.
Hey, here we go for a little ride after we swapped out the carburetors. Okay, so we've been out on the klx300r a couple of times since I swapped out the carburetor. The first time I still worked on some issues with the idle. One of the issues that I had was you'd come in hot and pull in the clutch and you'd expect to coast in, and you did. You coasted in with the engine dead. So I had to get that worked out. It was also still a little hard starting, and it didn't start on the first kick every time. So I messed with the idle some that day. The next time, before we went out the second time, I spent some time tweaking that idle screw and getting it just right. Went out on the trail, and I still had to mess with the idle screw a little bit, but I got it spot on that day. Wasn't hard. It was an easy thing to do. You just had to think about it a little bit about which way you need to go and what you need to be doing. So it's got more power now. You twist the throttle, you got throttle. It doesn't fall on its face. It's got power. It'll lift the wheel. If I was better at doing wheelies, I probably could ride a wheelie, but I'm not a wheelie rider. And summary of the project. Let's see. Bought the carburetor on Amazon, $200 and something. Had to send it to Bill Ballou to have it actually equipped to where it'd work well on the bike. So that was $100. We got $300 and something plus or minus $50 in odds and ends or whatever. Would I do it again? Absolutely. It makes the bike so much more fun to ride. I was actually to the point where I was gonna sell this bike and get me something else, just because of the throttle response just wasn't there. I'm glad I did this. I actually tried trading this klx300 for the brand new klx300, and lo and behold, they don't think that my bike was worth as much as I did. So couldn't make a trade. Sure would have liked to have that fuel injected, and sure would have liked to have that e-start. But hey, I got a bike that's paid for. It's not costing me anything. Got $300 in a carburetor mod. Am I jumping triples now? No, I wasn't planning to. Don't plan to. It's like I said, it's got throttle, it's got power. It'll pop a wheelie. You can get some more air. off the jumps. I'm not going to be jumping cars or anything like that anyway. It's a good trail bike, and but I wanted to have enough power to carry my 200-pound carcass up the hill and over the jumps. Anyway, would I do it again? Absolutely. Can't think of any better way to spend $300 and get more performance out of a bike. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments. Hit me up. Be glad to share what I know. No need for you to reinvent the wheel. Anyway, that's a summary of my KLX300 carburetor swap.